being self-determined might not make you happy. And you can be happy without any hint of self-determination. Many things people can give you can make you happy. They could satisfy any of your desires or fancies, or, fillet your opinion or something like that. And it'll make you happy without actually being the product of self-determination. Not anything you actually did, any responsibility you took on, which is all of a piece with self-determination. That means making yourself what you are and not being determined by outside influences. And we often get this confused, and depending on who you talk to, it goes all the way back to Aristotle, just about the ways in which we think being happy is just having our desires fulfilled. And maybe not even our particular desires, but maybe there's some sort of amalgamation of desires. And if we just take all of our desires and organize them and generalize them and abstract from them, and forget some and have some other, and have a nice little cocktail of desires, and we get all of those desires fulfilled, then we'll be happy. But that's not work. You can get that cocktail of desires fulfilled and be happy, but still not be self-determining, because what fulfilled that cocktail of desires was something other than your activity. Right? So to be self-determining means to actually take on the responsibility to make yourself what you are, which might not be great. You might be happier if someone else made you. You might be more comfortable if someone else made you. But if you want to be happy, if you want at the end of your life to be one of those 55, 60, 65, 75-year-old men who go into the karaoke bar and sing, "I did it my way." Yeah, you got to actually do it your way. And you have to take on the responsibility of self-determination and the ordeal of self-determination. And that also means you need to be able to respect other people and sustain substantial relationships with those other people. Because you can't have self-determination if you don't have those kinds of substantial relationships. And you can think, well, I can just have the relationships of someone who's dominating. I just need to be rich and pay people, and they'll be nice to me. And that way I can determine my own life if I just have enough money. Turns out that's not good enough, because what's actually determining your relationship is the other person's fear and vulnerability, not you and your freedom. You can't be relaxed around that person, because that person would poison you. A lot of slave owners apparently were surprised when, would you believe that their slaves would not hesitate to slit their throats at nighttime. And so that is not free, and that's not a self-determining situation. So you need actually the responsibility to impose your own limit and responsibility to treat other people equitably in order to actually be able to determine your life with them and sustain the substantive relationships with them. A lot of parents are surprised when their kids, it turns out the only reason their kids were being nice to them was because the kids were terrified of them or their whole life. And then the parents were actually bad parents in all of these non-obvious ways. So you really feel like you really understand who is self-determining and who is free, and who can sustain those relationships if they're not just merely sustained by money or fear, if they're actually sustained by reasonable appreciation or reasoned appreciation of the reciprocity that's endemic to the relationship. And all of that's an ordeal. So it's a lot easier to be happy than it is to be self-determining, because to be happy, all you have to do is get your desires fulfilled. To be self-determining, you got to sustain relationships and be accountable and responsible in a way. So why are all these people telling you to chase your happiness if that's going to often get you to indulge in habits that are like inimical to your self-determination? Why is that the case? Well, they want to make you buy stuff. And you indulging yourself might not actually be of a piece with the ordeal and responsibilities of self-determination, but it is of a piece with their product. And we live in a commercial society. So if they want you to buy stuff, they'll just tell you to chase happiness. Eat, pray, and love, as they sell you food, religion, and sex, right? So, I'm sure the eat, pray, and love crowd, the airlines loved that, right? They go travel, find your happiness in travel, not in sustaining your important relationships and responsibilities and reading to your kids and all of that stuff. So the idea that you can get happy, that happiness is of a piece with actual freedom and self-determination is not just ludicrous, it's actually pernicious. It's actually pernicious. Because you can have all of your desires fulfilled, but they won't be fulfilled in the right way because they didn't come from your specific sort of activity. So you didn't actually determine yourself. You just had these desires that were given to you, and you just happened to be, and then the world indulged you in your desires for some way, or you got your desires indulged without actually reflecting upon them in a way that's of a piece with self-determination. You didn't think about what kind of person you would be and then what kind of relationships these would have to be and how to sustain a meaningful, substantive relationship in terms of family, civil society, and politics, all of these different spheres of freedom that require a quality of reciprocity and a cognitive load that maybe you didn't feel like. So you just chased happiness and did what you want when you want to, and that worked out for you, and you attained happiness without self-determination. And then you're surprised that maybe some of your relationships or the things that depend on relationships didn't really sustain the way they were supposed to. People will be happy. You might be happier if you divorce your spouse and jettison your kids and go out and eat, pray, love. You might be happier. But is that self-determination? Or is that just indulgence? Did you just indulge in the smallest part of yourself without actually reflection? Can you actually reflect upon yourself and still sustain that happiness? Or is it happiness conditioned and not thinking too hard? That's an issue. A lot of people's happiness is conditioned because all they did was just indulge their immediate desires or partially mediated desires. They thought about it a little bit, but not too much. And then now their sustained happiness is dependent upon not thinking too much. Because if they think too much about their life, they'll either be driven to drink or get sad, right? So their happiness depends on not thinking too much. A real happiness in terms of self-determination, will sustain and actually call for thought, call for responsibility. But there will be a cognitive load. You'll have to think. And a lot of people haven't been prepared for the cognitive load of being responsible for their decisions, the cognitive load of self-determination. And, liberals are horrible about this because they don't actually believe that you have to take on responsibility in order and actually be actively take on responsibility and limit yourself in order to actually attain self-determination. They think you can do what you want when you want to because you want to and you enjoy it. And then are surprised when that actually undermines a lot of substantive relationships. And they're also, bad parents and dicey political actors and not great on the job. So, people assume I'm conservative because I bash liberals too much, but conservatives have different problems so far as they'll take conventional ways of doing things and take them on as their own without actually reflecting upon it. Are they good? Do they lead to freedom and progress and all of that stuff? So conservatives have their own problem, but that's not the problem I talk about here. It's the liberalism that's really, really bad. The liberalism who just says, follow your heart, eat, pray, love, just do what you want. I should be able to, do what I want when I want to because I want to. That's a horrible way of living life. And those people make awful friends and awful parents, the people who actually believe that. And they're surprised when their kids end up being wastrels. Or they end up being maybe, not the kids, but themselves. They're like closet conservatives. So they talk this liberal game. And then with the people they actually care about, they're like, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. And I expect you to obey me here and here and here and here and here because that's the only way we win. And that's the only way this relationships can be sustained. Right. So that's how they talk to people who they actually care about. To everybody else, they're like, well, just follow your heart. To their own daughter, they're like, don't you dare just follow your heart. Study here, study this, it doesn't matter what you want to do. Do this, do that. In order to become the kind of person that can sustain meaningful relationships and give me grandkids. Right. So that's the liberal who is a liberal in the streets, but conservative in the household. Those people are equally dangerous because they might not even know how hypocritical they are. But you have to understand that what's going on? You want to come tell the people? Come here. My kid just came down and he's telling me some good news. So he is learning how to type. There's a very good typing tutor program. We don't have too many screens in this house, but he is learning how to type. And how did you do? And the typing?
I did good.
You did good? So do you know the home keys, ASDF? And then now you learned which other keys?
The keys I know, ASDF.
JKL semicolon.
And JKL semicolon. E. O. H. C.
Good. Oh, H and C now. Good.
And
T and R.
Yeah, T and R.
Huh. Good. And you got 23 points. So if you get one more.
And
yes. Maybe N.
Some that I forgot.
Yeah. But you got 23 points. So you get one more over 20. And then you can go. Are you going? You know I too?
N.
N. Good. All right. Well,
that's all I remember.
And you're on lesson 5 right now, right?
Yeah.
And how many lessons are there?
20, but we're only going to 18.
18 is the whole keyboard. So 5 out of 18. And you've been at it for how long?
3 weeks. 3 weeks.
3 weeks? Okay. All right. Bit by bit by bit. All right. So let me finish my show and then I'll be right up. Okay?
See you later.
See you later. I love you. All right. So so we don't do a lot of screens in this house, but one thing the kids are learning is, like, while I do this show, he's up there doing his typing tutor program, and he's 7 years old, but his older sisters are doing it, and he wants to do it, and so, like, let's knock it out. 18 lessons. He's on lesson 5. Do about 15 minutes a day. By the new year, he'll be able to type, all of the words, all of the letters. So, he's a wonderful young man. He understands his responsibility, and he understands, he's a great kid. Anyway, he's also this close to setting the 2K record for under 8s in Georgia. Right now, it's 8 minutes and 4 seconds, and he ran his first race in 8 minutes and 23 seconds. So we have a month to get him down from 8 minutes and 23 seconds to 8 minutes and 4 seconds, and I think we can do it. Now he's 7, so he gets to go back in he gets to go back to this age range next year, but I want him to break the record this year and just knock it out, right? And then, running 2K. He can run 2K, cross country, 8 minutes, 23 seconds. The state record is 8 minutes and 4 seconds. I think he can do it, and we're going to see. He's got a month to do it till the state meet. But yeah, that's my son, 7 years old. So what I was saying, and he doesn't do it because it always makes him happy. He do it because it's very important for my kids to be praised for things they do, like for activities they do, and activities they do that they have to practice for, right? So it's not very fun them doing the practice, but at the end they get the medal, they get the praise. And maybe he even gets his record for what they do for his activity, for what he makes of himself and what he has made of himself during practice. And I constantly say that, it's a little bit of a mantra in this household that you win races in practice. And so you work hard in practice so that the races themselves are like, you don't really have to think about them too much. And I think it's just very important to teach those habits of self-determination as like when they're young. Or they'll end up not being very good agents as they get older, because if you're taught to chase what makes you happy when you're young, and it turns out that doing things in life as you get older requires enduring a lot of things that won't make you happy, then you just won't have the discipline and disposition to actually do things in life. So I want them to be agents in life. So I teach them a quality of agency in their youth that actually says forego happiness and focus on treating people well and coming up with rules with how you treat people and abiding by those rules in an important way. And, just training under a discipline, because a lot of life is dealing with other people under rules, so you have to work with them within a discipline if you want to be free with them. Now, if you want to dominate them, that's a little bit different, but that's still not freedom, and I want them to be free. So that means I need to teach them how to actually work with people in a way that respects them as others and not just tools for his aspirations. All right. So be very wary of those who tell you that happiness is the same as self-determination. You can be very happy by getting all of your desires indulged without actually doing anything to bring them about. And if that's an aspiration, and this is kind of a gendered aspiration, this is why I think like the way we do. I realized a few years ago that the worst influence on my daughters, I have two older daughters and that's my son, was like grown women. Because they were not the most self-determining fine, but they were happy because, you know, there are a lot of grown women who live life on a little bit of an easy mode and they don't actually have to take responsibility and accountability and do the kinds of things that I expected my daughters to do. So now I'm very cautious about the quality of women who are around my daughters. And unless you yourself have set a state record, you don't get to talk to my kid about running. unless you know how to do hard things, don't talk to my kids. I wonder about Olympic athletes. I wonder about their parents. I suspect they didn't grow up in liberal households. Like you take the Olympic athletes, they did not grow up in particularly liberal households because there's just a lot of training and there's just a lot of disposition. Especially like the individual sports swimmers, like it's impossible for me to believe that they grew up in households that would be considered like, oh, just do what you like it or do what you enjoy. Or if they did, they're just boring, right? So they didn't really have any other interests. And they weren't really like, they're not particularly interesting. And I do think, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of Olympic athletes are boring. But you know, I would be surprised if they grew up in households that would be considered, you know, just kind of do what you want and do what you enjoy and that's fine. Just if you want to quit, you can go ahead and quit. I suspect half of the Olympic athletes at some point in time thought of quitting their sports. At least, no, maybe even 2/3. Maybe even 2/3. Probably 2/3 thought before. Thought about quitting before the age of 12. And then if they wouldn't have made it to Paris if they had quit. So I am grateful for my kids. I'm grateful for Hegel, who actually makes all of this clear in both the Philosophy of Mind and Elements of the Philosophy of Right, about that there's a distinction between happiness and self-determination. And happiness, even if you take all of your disparate desires and try to organize them into like an amalgam of general happiness in general, that's still not going to get you what you need because there's no guarantee that, or there's no condition that you yourself had to do it. There's no condition that you yourself, and a lot of this actually is reflected in the Bible. That's another thing that Hegel works out, that like actually if you need all of this, you can just go through the Bible, and a lot of these lessons are going to be learned. And he thinks that religion is very important because it's a shorthand to all these things he works out like logically. But either way you get there, and that's fine for him. But you have to do the thing. You have to do it. You have to do the determination and not just have your desire indulged. And you can just have your desire indulged and be happy, but that doesn't mean you're self-determining. And, you know, and you have to be cautious about the cognitive load of self-determination. Sometimes it's a lot easier being happy all the time, but it's not the same as being self-determining. Being self-determining means taking on the cognitive load, sustaining the relationships, treating other people with respect, all of these things that actually might be averse to happiness, but insofar as happiness is a matter of fulfilling your desires and fancies, but are appropriate for if you want a self-determining life, if you want to be a meaningful thing, if you want a meaningful life. So you can either be happy or you can be meaningful. go ahead and try to be happy and then be surprised when nobody has anything to say at your funeral, except that they indulged the crap out of themselves. I think my funeral is going to be dope. I won't be there to enjoy it, but I suspect it will be cool. By the way, if you appreciate what I'm doing, which I think you should, because nobody's going to talk to you about this, at least with the kind of folksy wisdom with which I try to display, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, and $50 a month so I can, pay for all of my kids' lessons and violin lessons and piano lessons, and I can schlep up to their cross-country meets and also, upgrade my equipment to make sure I keep up with the latest fads and all that stuff. And send this out to your friends. Text this to your friend. Watch this video with your significant other and talk about it. Maybe your significant other is one of those people that are like, well, you have to let kids be kids and let them do what they enjoy. And I'm saying that's a great way to raise wasteful kids who will ultimately either be like leeches on society, happy leeches maybe, if they end up like sucking onto the right partner, or they'll be confused about why they are neither happy nor self-determining. Right? So you're going to have to, take this seriously and not just indulge your kids. So yeah, watch this with your significant others, especially before you have kids. I'm trying to save you from squandering your youth. And, if your significant other has a problem with what I'm saying, that might be, that might be a thing. That might be the thing you need to talk about, because you might end up raising kids with this person. These things need to be hashed out. It's not a joke. If like, liberals are not great at a lot of things. All right, so watch this with your partner. Send it out to your friends. Go over to www.funkyacademic.com and kick down $5, $15, or $50. I'm not one of those guys who's going to be gunning for a sponsorship with Patron or Hennessy or DraftKings or anything like that. So I need you, good people, to support the quality of wisdom that I'm trying to give you every, twice a week. I'm going to probably have another show this week on the debate, depending on how the debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump goes. And yeah, see you after then. Peace.